pretty special. You want to try that? Good, because I don't think it's spicy. I don't think it's so don't start this.
Hi everyone. Thanks so much for your support and suggestions. We're Bill Swan and Emma Black, and we are an atheist-theist couple who's been lucky enough to stay close through 44 years of marriage and raise 7 reasonably normal kids to adulthood.
When we first thought of creating a YouTube channel and presenting some of the challenges that we've been through as an atheist-theist couple, the ideas were just flying, and we had to collect them from all the scraps of paper we scribbled on and then sort them out and refine them into what we want to share in 15 to 20-minute segments.
Right. For a couple who want to nurture a loving relationship, there's so many things to talk about and work together on.
A lot.
We hope your enthusiasm will give us even more topics, and we'll be able to go back to some things we've already brought up and revisit them with more details if necessary. But raising children is an issue that's been requested already, so we'll just jump into a few minutes on kids.
You know, I actually took about 5 different child rearing classes. Okay, a few authors of parenting books had no kids of their own, so take their opinions with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Only people without children think raising kids is easy. Everyone has an opinion when it comes to kids. In reality, sometimes no matter what you do, they will make poor life choices. Religious parenting instructions, are often unrealistic, that's my opinion, owing to antiquated views about human nature and some from patriarchal thinking. And she knows that. She's just being silly. One class told you mothers should get up and start the day at 5 a.m.
That she did.
When you were working until night shifts until 7 a.m. That was impossible. And then to get every family member together for a family prayer every day. I know that was hard for you.
Oh. Well, as we mentioned before, we did have to let the kids know that grown-ups can have different positions for themselves and still agree on what they want to have for their kids. Yeah. Oh, I thought of it. Like if the parents were smokers, they would tell their kids, "We smoke, we're adults, but you don't.
Yeah, well,
don't try it, don't start.
We don't like to do as I say, not as I do. But anyway.
No, we didn't. But there are some cases where I think it's justified.
Well, we tried hard to present a united front to our kids. We both had to compromise sometimes to come to a joint decision. But we felt it was important not to confuse them when they were little, and we wanted to be consistent.
Well, we both grew up in alcoholic families, and inconsistency was kind of the order of the day.
Yeah. We were determined to provide a safe and balanced upbringing where our kids knew that they were loved unconditionally, and we wanted them to thrive and reach for their goals with confidence.
We felt strongly that we needed to present rules that were not going to allow them to play one of us against the other. When they were little and Mom and Dad were struggling with their own belief issues, we explained to them that people can have different feelings about going to church, but while they're young, it was very important to Mom that they go with me. So we got their dad to agree.
Most of us atheist parents are concerned about children being brainwashed by religious doctrine. It's a valid concern, but before putting your foot down on your spouse's neck, look at the stories or lessons that they're actually being taught. It's not always as bad as you think. Sunday school for our kids was generally a fun activity.
Yeah.
They didn't delve into deep theology.
Oh.
I wouldn't tolerate that. But Bible stories like Jonah and the whale and Noah's Ark, a very watered down version, are just stories to the kids. Most of us hear these along with legends and myths and fables all our lives. Unless they're told they have to believe these things are facts, the kids will just consider them interesting stories. If our kids wondered about it and they knew that they could ask. Really, the lessons for kids were more about proper behavior, respecting parents and teachers, and how to get along with other kids, and concepts for just getting along in society.
Making good choices.
Okay, it had a Jesus flavor, but nothing I considered too bad. An important thing is that it wasn't threatening or telling them non-believers were going to hell or that they were commanded to stay away from them. If they'd been telling my kids that I was evil, it would have been really impossible for me to let them go.
I know.
I fully recognize that there are churches that do that sort of thing, so you have to check it out for yourself if your spouse wants them to attend.
Well, I wouldn't have been able to tolerate my kids being trained to hate people, any people who disagreed with us, and especially not their dad. Their father's a great dad. I would have resumed my search for a more accepting church family for us. The teachings of your parents are the foundation of your worldviews.
Right.
Wow, hey, that's important. I'll repeat it for emphasis. What your parents taught you by their words and actions are the starting point for your view of the world.
We have so many ideas for talking about what our kids need to learn to be healthy and well-adjusted. We're going to try to keep our focus on the thoughts for younger kids in this episode, from toddlers up to preteens.
Okay. And then do another episode on how we managed our more savvy and questioning teenagers.
Yeah. Emma puts up poems and notes with inspiring messages all through our home. It's her thing. We used to have a poem in the hallway called Children Learn What They Live.
Yes.
You can find it for free off the internet, but basically it says that when kids live with negative teachings like criticism and hostility and ridicule or shame, they learn to be shy or fight and be condemning or feel guilty.
Right.
But if they live in a home with tolerance, fairness, praise, and approval, they learn gratitude, justice, patience, and they learn to like themselves and be friends with others.
My church teaches love and caring for all people, no matter where they're from. They use the positive qualities of appreciation and understanding and not negative methods to share the gospel. Threats of hell are not part of who we are. So this isn't a religious poem. It's not from the New Testament, but it felt true when I read it, and it's what I believe that the Savior wanted my children to learn and live.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty obvious to most people that when parents are harsh, kids learn to be afraid or they have anger inside.
Right.
If parents are too indulgent, the kids start to think the world revolves around them, and that's not healthy. If parents are negligent, the kids grow up feeling like they're worthless. And having kids meant that our family life had to involve activities that included mom and dad and the kids.
Right. Kids need both love and discipline. So that makes 4 possible combinations. High discipline, low love. Low discipline, low love. High love, but low discipline. And high love, high discipline, which we feel is the most healthy. Very few parents are purely one type, but we all seem to fit into one style or another. By allowing our kids to see that the way we talk to each other isn't criticizing or attacking the other parent's viewpoint, they learn to communicate better with us and then with other people.
Well, if we're not trying to hurt another person or piss on their beliefs, we want to ask ourselves, what's our motivation for what we're saying? If it's to belittle them or shock them or act superior, then that's just mean and won't likely be received very well.
No. But if it's to inform them or to genuinely show that we want to learn more about why they feel the way they do, then it comes across as more friendly and accepting and not an attack.
And that takes practice and should start at home. When parents become more aware of the importance of balancing both lots of love and confident discipline, we can start a cycle of happier kids who are better behaved and confident, and happier parents who enjoy raising their family and still have the time and energy to protect their own relationship.
Right.
Okay. An old saying we treasured was that the best gift a father can give to his children is to love their mother.
Oh, aren't you sweet? Well, we're old, so we think of old things. In the old days, divorce was not really acceptable. And so there were parents who stayed together just for the sake of the kids. That's what this society said. So our parents were divorced, but they still treated each other with respect. And an old way of thinking was that important learning didn't really matter until a child was about 6 years old. When we were born, most kids did not go to preschool or kindergarten.
And, it's funny, my parents treated each other more politely and with more respect after they got divorced, and that was better for me and my brother.
Sure.
But kids start learning about their world from infancy.
We know that.
When we respond to their first cries, we teach them love, and that's the basis for their emotional health, and it empowers them. Our mothers were told that they need to ignore their kids crying so that they wouldn't spoil them.
Thank goodness our moms chose to ignore that rule.
I don't know, I'm kind of spoiled. But
Me too.
Because experts now say that not responding to a baby's cries is really teaching a child that they're not that important.
Yeah, we can't do that. There's so many swings in parenting rules, though. Now, we've raised kids born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2001.
And yes, we do know where they come from.
We realized early on that we had to do what we felt was right for our family and not do what someone else told us to do with our children. Not that I don't appreciate all the ideas I heard and saw, how other moms managed the millions of challenges of raising healthy kids. We just took what we liked best and we had the energy for.
Yeah. Most of our parenting advice that we got came from people that we respected.
Right.
Because remember, we didn't have the
We
internet.
didn't have the internet.
But if it felt wrong, we learned not to argue with them. We just said, that's something we'll discuss together. And we usually went ahead and did what we felt was best.
Right. So, our first advice for other parents is to try to look at your family as if it's not yours.
Yeah.
We can often see what's wrong in another house, but we don't stop to analyze our own.
Oh, yeah.
Consider all the possibilities you can think of if those parents keep on doing this or that. And the way they're talking to their kids. How do you think their kids are going to turn out? If it causes worry, then maybe some adjustments are in order. Mm-hmm. If you think, wow, those parents are really doing a good job of balancing love and discipline, their kids have a good chance of being all right. Then you just keep right on doing what you both feel most confident and comfortable doing. Trust yourselves.
Yeah. If you don't want to play shampoo sculptures in the tub every night for a year, you may not want to start that one. Kids will repeat what they find fun and interesting until you just want to pull your hair out.
They do.
Do it again.
They do. We learned to be careful with who we listened to telling us what was best for our kids. Didn't matter if it was a church friend or a fancy child specialist. They don't know you or your kids. So we're not telling anyone what's best for your children. You listen to lots of other ideas and then choose for yourself what's acceptable to you both.
If something you try doesn't seem to be taking your family in the direction you want to go after a fair trial, then don't be afraid to try something new, but make that decision together and keep it consistent.
Consistent. It can be something as simple as when to feed your kids pureed food, or the potty training the routine that you decide you want to use. You should be in sync, okay? Maybe when to allow them to have sugar on their cereal or ride their bike to school.
Mostly when they were little, we just wanted to have fun with them, model polite behaviors like saying please and thank you, and not just demanding they do it in front of people we wanted to impress.
Oh, what do you say?
So good manners became natural for them, and we're proud of that.
We are.
We love to celebrate their milestones and create our own family traditions, incorporating any useful parts of her upbringing and mine.
Right. Routines and traditions seem to be easier to establish when they're younger. Once they're teens and have more independence, they tend to go in all different directions and play havoc with your family plans. You will want to feel in control when they're small, and you can still pick them up. And we also didn't feel that exact times on the clock were as important as the patterns, so that the kids would know what to expect next.
Yeah, like after dinner, put your plates in the sink and do your chore. Even little guys can wipe the table, feed the dog, or take out the trash.
Right. And bedtime was take a bath, brush your teeth, get in pajamas, and pick out your story. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it helps the kids to know what's expected of them. And yes, I said grace and prayers with them. And sometimes when things didn't go quite the way that it usually did that night, they also learned how to roll with the punches without a meltdown.
And that's a great skill for the rest of their lives. Giving kids chores that match their abilities helps them to feel accomplished and confident, and they know they're important members of the family.
That's true.
We tried to compliment their efforts directly to them, but also let them overhear us bragging to our friends about their concert or game, or how they cleaned up the bathroom so quickly when Grandma was coming to visit.
We had to intentionally watch for the things they were doing that were thoughtful or showed responsibility. The things you notice are the things they tend to repeat.
Because family is important, we never hesitated to put them in the van and travel 4 days from coast to coast to see their grandparents for holidays or a summer vacation. And we didn't have car TVs or Game Boys back then.
Oh, we did not.
So they played cards or travel games, and we read books together.
And we had a lot of fun on our road trips. Now, we don't want to give the impression that we always knew what we were doing. We weren't always perfectly organized with a spotless house and 5 well-behaved straight A children. But the kids knew that we both loved them dearly. And they knew they had to get that consistency, and we knew we expected chores before fun, and our weekly schedules were pretty predictable most of the year.
And we aren't just remembering things like they were all just unicorns farting rainbows. We see our old family photos, and we were pretty happy and connected. We had to make friends quickly in the military bases because they could be transferred at any time.
That's true. Sunday was part of our weekly activities. When church events weren't about preaching and teaching, we invited Dad to come to the activities that were family fun. So we could have three-legged races and have hot dogs or Easter egg hunts. And he was willing to stand by for a blessing on the refreshments for 45 seconds so that we could all have a fun and free afternoon all together.
Yeah, and I still cared what they were doing. I asked them to show me the pictures from church and tell me the stories that they heard. That's how I knew that the lessons their teachers were telling them weren't going to cause my kids to hate me or others. They also knew other kids who had a parent who didn't go to church either, so they weren't feeling like the odd man out.
No.
Sometimes you have to balance what you want to do as a parent versus what you want to do as an atheist or as a theist.
And I was able to attend Sunday morning services regularly when our first 5 kids were younger. I got up, made a nice breakfast, expected the kids to get ready on time in their church clothes, period. No debates every week.
No nonsense, Mom.
Right. Well, and Bill helped me to corral and comb hair for my 5 little angels.
And when they were younger, the rules in our home weren't designed specifically to honor God. They were mostly manners and respect, contributing to the family and doing their best in school, becoming a good person, making good choices and experiencing the consequences of their actions.
That was important.
Yeah. Religious concepts were abstract and were not seriously discussed before they were about 8.
Right. But, going to Sunday school, it was only an hour or 2 a week.
I know.
So they enjoyed it. They looked forward to it. It was another fun activity. It wasn't something they had to think deeply about it. Now, the question of why doesn't Daddy have to go to church with us was answered probably once per kid with the simplest explanation that some people like to go to church and some people don't. We didn't really try to explain how some people can lose their faith or some people don't find value in religion when they were only 5 years old. We just wanted them to know Mom and Dad love them very, very much, and I wanted them to know that they had a Heavenly Father who watched over them and wanted them to make good choices so that they would have a happy life. And they learned repentance, how to apologize for their misbehaviors.
The kids started to see that other people do things differently when they were able to go and spend the night over at friends' houses.
Yeah.
Emma used to put Fruit Loops as candy treat in little baggies, and when we go to the movies or in the car, and then we still tell our grandchildren about the story when he came home after staying overnight at somebody's house. He goes, "Did you know that you can put Fruit Loops in a bowl and pour milk on them and eat them like cereal?"
And my secret was out. Oh, but truly, as they grew up, we encouraged them to have friends of all ethnic and religious persuasions. Living on a military base made that very easy. And when they would tell us their friends' families did anything differently from us, it was openly discussed. Our oldest daughter had a best friend whose parents were nudists. And that was awkward at first. But then we learned a lot about the naturist lifestyle. Another family were heavy smokers. Some were hunters. And another was really into the Society for Creative Anachronism.
Look that up if you don't know what it is.
Well, but we didn't know what some of those things were all about until we went into their houses.
Right. But as long as we didn't freak out and clamp down on something that they thought it was interesting or different about their friends, and we kept the lines of communication open, and we tried not to sound harsh or judgmental about other families and what they did.
That's not always easy.
I know.
We have these preconceived notions. So, for example, I don't like scary movies. And my kids all know that. Okay? I'm not invited to go with them. I want to be very careful that the way I say I don't do the same things that other people do doesn't make me sound like I hate them or that I think I'm better than they are. Yeah. I want to be aware of how I talk to others because I don't ever want to shut that door of communication, not with my kids or with him. So it's really important to me that they can always tell me what's going on in their lives and what new and interesting things they are learning about.
And just because our family doesn't surf or skydive or play in competitive ping pong tournaments, it doesn't mean we don't want the kids to be around other people with different interests, maybe. We have more things in common than we have differences.
Right.
Seeing other interests that we don't have the time or talents for help them to be well-rounded. And our two oldest sons still like to fight with the SA.
They do.
And they're pretty good with a spear and sword and a shield.
Yep. They're actually a formidable team together. And it keeps them both in shape now that they're both dads. We've done a lot of fun activities with other families that we might not have ever thought about doing if we hadn't met, if we hadn't met them through our kids. We didn't always socialize with only church members. Now, that might have been a little easier for me. I knew what language to expect and what clothing to wear. But reaching out with our kids' friends in a variety of social settings was going a little bit out of my comfort zone.
Right.
But if we're trying to teach our kids to focus on how to talk to other people and appreciate their differences, it's only fair to also go places and do things that are different from me and experiencing them for myself. We built some really wonderful memories with them.
I realize how much you wanted them to stay with you and honor your beliefs. And I know you didn't want them to pull away from you, even if they couldn't completely agree with your religion. And I know you didn't want them to be brainwashed. You wanted them to think and choose your faith for themselves.
You're right. That's a good way to put it. I didn't want them I didn't want to raise them in a bubble.
Yeah.
I had two wonderful grandmothers who went to different churches, and we did things a little differently at our house and at each one of theirs.
Yeah. You learned when you were 7 that two strong, loving Christian women could have completely different ideas of ways to demonstrate their faith.
That's true. Absolutely. It wasn't traumatic. There was no arguing or fighting or, backbiting or it was great. I mean, each one just told me that my other grandmother was wonderful, but that she had been taught differently, and that everyone needed to decide for themselves what they felt that the Lord wanted them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Two precious ladies who thought I was just adorable.
Well, you were.
Now, how could I imagine that one grandma would be rewarded and the other would burn in hell because she was in the wrong church? Mm-hmm. Eventually, kids wonder about everything we teach them and that they hear about.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to discuss how that is a really important task of adolescence.
Yeah. We do have a few important points to summarize. Okay. First, demeaning or belittling the other parent's beliefs is something we don't do.
We don't.
We don't recommend it. We can respectfully disagree in private.
Mm-hmm. And we know that some parents will take babies to church, and others will wait until they're older, like 5 or 7. Everyone needs to do what works best for them as a couple. Giving the kids no religious teachings and letting them decide when they're older is still giving them teachings. Mm-hmm. They're going to hear about God from other people. So you're going to want to talk about what's comfortable for each parent, just so that, your kids can't start a battle that just makes everybody uncomfortable, unhappy.
Anytime you're discussing theological issues with them, from either perspective, keep the information simple and appropriate for their age. Telling a 4-year-old that some people like to say prayers and some people don't, that's fine, and they accept that.
Sure.
You wouldn't overwhelm a 6-year-old with details about sexuality or something like surgery. If the subject came up. You'd give her a simplified explanation and let her know that her questions are welcome at any time.
That's important. Questions, you want your kids to be able to ask questions anytime. A parent's job includes protecting their children from adult conflicts. So if something comes up that needs to be discussed between the atheist-theist couple, please do it quietly and privately. Hearing your parents having a heated argument is distressing. They can be told calmly that grown-ups don't have to agree perfectly, but that you've decided together that this is what the kids are going to do or be told at this time.
As they grow, things can change, and there can be another family meeting later. It's great to look at your kids and be proud of how they treat others, all others. Every parent loves to brag about their youngins.
No, I used to love people's reactions when we would tell them, we have 7 kids and they all eat green vegetables.
Yeah, they wanted to know how we did it. And that's a good example of getting them to do something we both felt was important without forcing them.
Well, it was kind of easy. When they were about 3, we'd put lima beans or Brussels sprouts on our plates, but not on theirs. They'd notice, of course, and they'd ask, well, why didn't they get some?
So we'd tell them that these are only for grown-ups. But, of course, they thought they were big kids now, and they wanted to try some.
Yeah, so we kind of made a big deal. We'd give them like 1 or 2 tiny bites that, like, we didn't want to share our special food. It worked great. They ate them, and they usually liked them. We never, ever made them sit there until they ate something.
Yeah.
I still hate canned spinach after sitting at the dinner table until I fell asleep on the floor when I was about 11.
Oh, yeah, that was bad. But that's not as bad as having to eat off the floor.
No, I heard that story,
but that's
too.
a story for a different time. The point is that forcing a child to eat or go to church sounds like a pretty good way to get them to hate the whole idea.
Right. No one wants to be forced or threatened. And it's why I brought quiet books and coloring books for Sunday morning. Helping them to learn to love religious activities should be joyful and special. Formal religious instruction is generally only an hour or 2 a week. The rest of the time, it's basically, what would Jesus want me to do? And helping them choose the right.
Right. We try to take the opportunity to discuss good and bad choices and consequences whenever we saw a natural opportunity, like on a TV show or when a friend got caught cheating or something. Mm-hmm. You want to keep the discussion appropriate for their age and attention span, but you also want to make sure that the kids know from the time that they're in preschool that no subjects are taboo, that they can talk to either parent about anything that comes up.
Right. It keeps them safe, and more importantly, it keeps the lines of communication open, especially for some of those all-important big talks when they get to their teen years, and they will still need you.
Right. And we'll continue with thoughts on loving those teenagers through their questions and challenges next time. It does get interesting. Stay with us.
Thank you for your comments. And it's such a compliment when we have new subscribers.
Yes. Oh, and thanks to Mr. Atheist and his kind words about our channel. We will link to it in the comments if you haven't seen it. You really should.
I guess if you're bonded to an atheist, you could check him out. He could actually be like between kid number 5 and kid number 6. We hope that we're going to be a source for you to be able to have these kinds of conversations in your own theist, atheist families. And until next time, make every day the best it can be.